Hello and welcome to the show. My guest today is originally from Bulgaria and has been living here in Berlin for the last 3.5 years. Hristo Kyuchukov is of Roma descent and a leading specialist of the Romani language. He has a PhD in psycholinguistics and is a visiting professor at a number of universities around the world, including the Free University here in Berlin. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I have to ask you, first of all, you could presumably live in a number of countries because you're a professor all over the place. So why did you choose Germany?
Well, there was some personal reason for that, and economical reason, of course. I was working in Slovakia, and the things didn't go very well in Slovakia in the university. And then I have a brother here who lives in Berlin and sister who lives in Hamburg. And we decided that we get together, and this is why I moved to Berlin. And later I contacted the Free University, and I was invited to give some lectures there. So this is how it happens.
Now, you're in much demand around the world because you're a psycholinguist. Now, I know what a psychologist is. I know what a linguist is. But can you tell us what a psycholinguist is, then?
Well, very briefly, psycholinguistics is a science which is dealing with psychology of language, or how the human beings are speaking 1 or 2 or 3 languages. And I'm interested in this, how Roma and Turkish minority children are learning 2 or 3 languages in their natural environment at home, or how they learn a 2nd or 3rd language in kindergarten or primary school, and what kind of mistakes they do when they learn the language and why they do those mistakes. And actually, there are a number of other areas of psycholinguistics, like dealing with adults learning a 2nd language or foreign language, or neurolinguistics, which is how someone learns the language after having a stroke or kind of catastrophe with car or motorbike or something, and then he loses part of the language, and then how he recovers. So these are the areas which psycholinguistics deals with, and I'm particularly interested in bilingualism and bilingual children who grow up with 2 or 3 languages, because this was my life experience. I grew up with 3 languages in Bulgaria, and at home with my grandparents I was speaking Turkish. In kindergarten I was learning Bulgarian, and a little bit later from my friends in the Roma settlement I started to learn Romani, and later around the age of 8 I started to learn Russian language at school.
Oh my goodness.
This was, from the age of 6, 7, 8, I was using 4 languages actively. I mean, learning and using the languages in everyday communication.
Extraordinary. Well, tell us about the Romani language, which you're an expert of, because I think people, I certainly didn't before I knew you were coming and did my research, don't know a lot about this language. It's of Indian origin, isn't it?
Yes, Romani belongs to the New Indian languages, and it is very much related to Hindi. And in nowadays Romani, 70 to 80% of the vocabulary is from Hindi. However, throughout the centuries, Roma left India some 11 centuries ago. Throughout the centuries, the grammar and the structure of the sentences changed, and Romani adapted a lot from European languages, mainly Greek and Romanian and Armenian before that. So it is Indo-European language, which has its roots in Hindi.
Indo-European language.
That's
I
right.
wanted to show, you've given us some wonderful personal pictures. I want to show a first picture of your mum.
Yes.
Who looks fabulous. And I wanted to ask, in connection with that, about the costume she's wearing. Is that of Indian origin at all?
Well, actually not. This is a costume from the Ottoman Empire. This is a costume which my grandmother used when she was having the wedding. And actually, this is a wedding costume of my grandmother, the mother of my father. So during the Ottoman Empire, Bulgaria was for approximately 500 years part of the Ottoman Empire. The Muslim Roma actually were wearing those kind of costumes, clothes, and it is a wedding costume, actually.
Okay. Now, and you were responsible for the Romani language being put or taught in schools in Bulgaria, I believe, originally.
Yeah, that's right. In 1992, I was working at the Ministry of Education in Bulgaria as an expert on Romani language, and my task was to develop textbooks for teachers and for children and to train Roma teachers to teach Romani language. And this was between 1992 and 1996. And we had some kind of something like 5,000 Roma children learning the language and approximately 50 teachers within these 4 years.
And it's still going on to this day?
Well, unfortunately, no, because the government changed its policy towards Romani language. Very often the people think that if the Roma children speak Romani, this will be an obstacle for better learning of the official language, which is not true. And very often we, the psycholinguists, prove and show through research that if the child has a good grammar in his mother tongue, then he much better perform and acquire and learn the second or third language.
You know, I can agree with you. I have bilingual children, and one of them, who was born and bred here, is studying English in Scotland, actually, and he's better than most of them at the English language. Yeah. So it's true. Now, you're a language expert, and I want to ask you, I know you're currently taking German lessons, but this isn't simple German lessons. You're on a very, very advanced stage. And I wanted to ask you, in the great scheme of things, how do you rate the German language? Well,
I love German language because it is not very similar to the other languages which I use to speak, which I use in my everyday life. And the grammar makes me extremely excited about how the structure of the sentences work. And now we are in the stage where we learn the relative clauses, the sentences which are...
I think we should hear that again. The grammar makes you extremely excited.
Yes,
you heard it here first. I think many of my colleagues here will find that wonderful, because isn't it a difficult language grammatically?
Well, exactly, because it is difficult language. It makes me to comparing the grammar of German with the grammar of other languages, always consciously or unconsciously I do that. I see that the grammar of German is quite different from the grammars of other languages, and this is what I love, because it makes me constantly to think how I would say this in German, which I say it in Bulgarian, Turkish, Romani, Slovak, English, or Russian. So it's totally different way.
I mean, as we said, it's a great language. I mean, it's the language of Goethe and Schiller, and Heine and so many others, of course.
Yeah.
I want to go on and ask you about the Roma people, and we can talk more about that in a minute, but it's perhaps not well known that during the Holocaust here, the Roma and the Sinti were persecuted just like the Jews, weren't they?
That's right. And there are different numbers, different sources quote different numbers about the Roma who were killed in the concentration camps, and they are between 500,000 to 1 million Roma who were killed. But actually, these are the 500,000 are only those who were killed in Germany, but there were a lot of Roma who were killed during the Second World War by Nazis in other countries, like in Romania, in Ukraine, in Croatia, and those things are just now coming out. There were recently published books about the Roma who were killed in Romania during the Second World War by the Nazis, exactly in this kind of concentration camps like Auschwitz or Birkenau or other concentration camps. And in Czech Republic and in Slovakia, for example, we know that the Czech Roma were totally killed. There was no any single Czech Rom after the Second World War, and nowadays the Roma who are in Czech Republic actually are those who are from Slovakia. They are Slovak Roma. And there were a lot of concentration camps in Poland and a lot of concentration camps in, as I already said, in
you say it's
Czech Republic, yeah.
just coming out. But I mean, I should say that Germany and the Germans have never tried to hide from the reality of the Holocaust and the terrible events of the 1930s and 40s, but the suffering of the Sinti and Roma in Europe at this time has only recently been commemorated here.
Almost 70 years have passed since the end of World War II. But a memorial commemorating the Sinti and Roma suffering in the Holocaust was only inaugurated in Berlin in 2012. The pool is a reminder of the concentration camp at Auschwitz.
The memorial in Berlin is very fitting. What many people don't know is that there was a pool of water in Auschwitz-Birkenau, at the back of the camp, hidden between the trees. There's a small pond back there, with water that's almost black. That's where they dumped the ashes back then. The ashes of people they cremated.
Sinti and Roma have faced discrimination in Europe for centuries. Frequently, they were tarred as tricksters, witches, or thieves. The Nazis persecuted them and imprisoned them in concentration camps. Up to 500,000 were killed. The Requiem for Auschwitz is also intended to keep the memory of the suffering alive. The music is an expression of pain. Riccardo Sahiti, a Romani musician from the former Yugoslavia, is conducting the Roma and Sinti Philharmonic Orchestra performance. Roger Moreno-Radgeb, a Sinto from Switzerland, composed the Requiem after a visit to Auschwitz.
Through this work, people will see, oh, there are other Sinti and Roma too, who can do more than just play street music.
Riccardo Sahiti set up the orchestra about 10 years ago, gathering together musicians from across Europe.
My partner said to me, you should just go ahead and found an orchestra. I said, what do you mean, found an orchestra? That's impossible. And then she told me, well, someone has to take that step. And we talked about it almost every day for 5 years.
They're performing at the Alte Oper Concert Hall in Frankfurt.
The conductor Riccardo Sahiti was quite right when he called it the Roma theme. It's basically a gypsy musical scale. The theme appears at the beginning, in the prelude, and has a dominant role. It symbolizes the cry of the gypsies in the concentration camp back then.
A Requiem for Auschwitz, performed by a Roma and Sinti orchestra in Germany. That's a first.
Today we're in the Alte Oper, in the large concert hall here, and my vision also begins today. I'd like this orchestra to perform in important concert halls all over the world.
It touches our heart and soul. Our parents were in Auschwitz. My parents were there, and my wife's parents were also in Auschwitz.
It made me understand a lot, and I'm very, very moved.
saw this concert in Berlin.
Yes, I saw it last year, and it's a very emotional one. And now watching the documentary here, I get also emotional. It's really very nice.
Yeah. Hristo Kyuchukov is my guest, a linguist, and I noticed there, I want to sort something out, the composer Roger Moreno used the word there, gypsy. In fact, he spoke in German, he used the word Zigeuner. And I'd like to talk about those two words, because the translation of Zigeuner to English is gypsy.
That's right.
But I mean, I believe Zigeuner is really quite a derogatory word to you, and gypsy too. I mean, tell us about those two words, because you're the expert.
Yeah, well, the word Zigeuner is coming from the Greek word atzinganoi, which means unclean, polluted, dirty. So in Byzantine Empire, when the Indian people arrived to the Byzantine Empire some 8th centuries, 9th centuries ago, they were taken as unclean people, and the Greek people created the word atzinganoi, and later from this word we have different words like Zigeuner, Zingari, Zigan, Singere, Sigenere in different languages, but the meaning of the word changed during mid-centuries when one part of the Roma were kept in slavery in Romania. In Romanian language, the word Țigan had the meaning of slave, but not all the Roma were kept in slavery in Romania. There were groups which were not going through Romania, and they were not catched by the Romanians, and they were not slaves. And actually, approximately 450 years, 460 years, Roma were kept, part of Roma were kept in slavery in Romania. And this is why some Roma groups are very, very against the use of the word Țigan, Zigeuner, Zingari, and all other varieties.
What about gypsy, though? Because we have music. I mean, of course, there's a great tradition of music. People talk about gypsy music. People talk about, well, there's the Gypsy Kings, were a group.
Yeah. The word gypsy, or the name gypsy, comes from the word Egyptian, because in 14th, 15th century, when the Roma came to West Europe, particularly to England, and also in Spain, the word in Spain is gitanos, and the ground, the bases are exactly from the word Egyptian. So the people were thinking that these dark-skinned, black-haired people are coming from Egypt, and from the word Egyptians, later the word became gypsy. And it has also negative meaning, and shows negative attitude to the people who belong to this ethnic group. But I think Zigeuner is much more negative than gypsy. And till some years ago, the Council of Europe was using the three titles, the three names, Roma, gypsy, and travelers. But recently, the word gypsy is not used anymore from the Council of Europe. In all official documents, is written only Roma and travelers, because in England and the Roma are called travelers, and very often in England still the word gypsy is used, referring to this minority group.
Let's travel, actually, a little bit back to Bulgaria, and just want to ask you, actually, first we should show the map of where you come from, because you come from a city I didn't know. I did know Varna, but you come from near there.
Yeah.
Tell us about Provadia.
Provadia.
Oh, Provadia.
Yes. Provadia is a small town in northeast part of Bulgaria, very close to Varna. And it's a very old town. It existed during the Ottoman Empire. So my relatives and my grandparents were living in this region, not so far from Provadia, but at the beginning of the century, last century, they moved to Provadia. So my father was born in Provadia, I was born in Provadia. And
we got let's share.
Yeah, this is my father.
The little Hristo
Yeah.
with mum and dad in the fields. It looks idyllic. I mean,
Yeah, well, that time I was Hussein, actually, because I was born as Hussein, and later I changed my name to Hristo because of the political situation in Bulgaria. But these are my mother and my father, and not so far from the house where I was born and I grew up.
did you feel, though, growing up, as an outsider?
Well, during the communist regime, we had much better conditions. Saying we, I mean the Roma people in Bulgaria. Of course, it was absolutely forbidden to use the language, the culture, and the religion, but all Roma had jobs, and we were obliged to attend school, and the communist regime was, in a way, a little bit more taking care of the minorities. But the assimilatory policy was there because in mid-80s, the Turkish minority in Bulgaria and other Muslim minorities were forced to change their names. So it was, at that time I was 22 years old when I had to change my name. And this is how it happened.
We've written a book about changing your name, which we'll come to, and we're going to give away a copy of. But the little I've read about the Roma people, they seem to have been persecuted, though, for centuries. They seem to be the scapegoat for all kinds of ills, and you're the best person to ask. Why is this, do you think?
Well, we shouldn't forget that the Roma come from India. And the Indian culture, the Hindu culture, is a very peaceful culture. These are people who will not start a war, or they will not attack any other nation or any other group of people. Very often, the Roma were leaving from one place to another place because they wanted to escape from persecution, from all kind of negative attitudes to them, and this is how, in a way, they became nomadic. But we should tell something very important to the audience, that Roma never in their history for last 1,100 years started a war against any other nation. Roma never attacked anyone. Roma were the people who were trying to live in peace, but because of their outlook, because of their culture, which was not very well accepted or seen in the societies, they were outsiders. Just because you have different outlook and different culture and language, very often the people will marginalize you and ignore you and behave to you not in a very, very proper way. And unfortunately, it goes until today. Still in many East European countries, the Roma are the most persecuted and most marginalized groups, unfortunately. Now,
it's all changed since the beginning of this year. I'm not just talking about the Roma here. With the freedom of movement within the EU, I'm talking about the Romanians and the Bulgarians. And there was a lot of scaremongering going on about that as well, wasn't there?
Yes, that's right, because particularly some governments, like French government and English government, they were having very strong debates. Here in Germany also, there were some debates about this. Should we allow the Bulgarians and the Romanians to enter the countries and to come and to live here? And everyone knows that saying Bulgarians and Romanians, they mean Bulgarian Roma and Romanian Roma. But
do you really think so?
Oh, yeah. I know that the attitude of the majorities, it's... I have been speaking with some Bulgarians who are ethnic Bulgarians, and they were telling me, they treat us like the other Roma people here, thinking that we are Roma, and the attitude is not very positive.
I want to show a piece now, because the media are certainly a bit to blame. We'll talk about that. Ahead of this change, there was a lot of talk in the press about floods of immigrants. Let's just look at a short film about the lifting of restrictions, and then we'll talk some more.
Bulgaria and Romania are two of the European Union's poorest members. Average monthly income there is under 400 euros. Nobody knows exactly how many Romanians and Bulgarians will take advantage in the coming months of the right to work and draw social benefits in other member states. But British lawmakers have pushed through measures to prevent EU migrants from claiming unemployment right after they arrive. And Germany's Christian Social Union, one of the country's 3 governing coalition partners, also wants to raise barriers to prevent what it calls poverty migration. The moves have sparked a debate on limiting freedom of movement in Europe.
This flood of immigrants, as we now know, hasn't happened, of course.
Well, actually, the people who wanted to come to Germany, France, England, they already came in the last years when Bulgaria and Romania became members of the European Union. So if there are newcomers, they are not so many as it was expected. But the media here played a very bad role, in a way, dirty games, presenting that, you see that there are numbers, thousands of Roma coming, mainly Roma, of course. They were putting some stress on that are coming from Bulgaria and Romania, and this brought some kind of negative attitudes in the societies towards Roma. And very often the people, the majority in these countries like England, Germany, and France, they don't understand that these are not more than few thousands of people. So last year I was invited to, I think it was Duisburg, to give a lecture there. And I spoke in front of social workers and people who are working in different institutions who have to help Roma communities coming from Bulgaria and from Romania. And I asked them, how many Roma do you have here in the city? And they told me, okay, well, something like 2,000. And what is the general number of the population in the city? 500,000. So for me, it's a little bit strange if you cannot solve the problems of 2,000 people to make out of it such a great problem, like it sounds that that particular city, I don't remember, was it Düsseldorf or Duisburg, doesn't matter. So that it sounds like the number of the people who are creating those problems, particularly Roma, is more than 500,000. So it's always there are these kind of games with the numbers of the people, and the media is not very correct in that.
Well, I mean, we're correcting that a little from our point of view, talking to you. I certainly think so. I'd like to think so, and certainly my research has opened my eyes to the Roma people much more. And there is a bigoted view around. It's not. I'm not relating this to Germany. It's everywhere, isn't it?
Well,
it really is.
It is very negative attitude. That there is such a negative attitude because I never saw any German TV channel or any English TV channel to show anything positive from the migrants which are coming from East Europe. It doesn't matter from Bulgaria, Romania. There are thousands of Roma families where the children go to school, the parents working, and they are integrated. They attend German language classes, for example, in Germany. But this is not as it's not so attractive to be shown in the television or to be published in a newsletter or any journal. So the journalists very often are looking for kind of exciting stories of poverty. Not all the migrants who are coming here live in poverty. They have absolutely normal life. I know many Roma families from Bulgaria and Romania where they have all the conditions to have normal life, and they are working here, and the children go to school and they learn the languages. So what else they can do? I mean, but still, the attitude is very, very negative.
What was the attitude when you settled here? You're an academic, you know.
Yes.
But when you settled here in 2010, how were you received? I mean,
well, there was two different attitudes towards me. When I was going to the institutions to get in order my documents, because I didn't know German that time, I was treated like someone who is stupid, although that I was speaking in English. So very often the people in those institutions, when you speak English but you don't know any German, for them this is, you know, it's egal, it is the same. You are stupid. You don't belong to us.
I mean, but that would be the same in my country,
yeah,
England, and nobody there, well, not nobody, but I mean, nobody in an office would speak any English, whereas here they, would speak any German. I mean, but the Germans here at least spoke English, didn't they?
Well, they didn't like this, that you are a migrant and I'm not white and blonde and with blue eyes. I'm dark. And they can see that I'm a stranger here. This was the negative attitude. But at the same time, I had very nice attitude from different organizations which are working with Roma, NGOs and other type of organizations, and colleagues from the university, because they know my background and my works. It's all my publications. And yeah, I was very well received by academicians and people working in different NGOs.
I think on the whole, you're quite a fan of Germany, aren't you, really? I see, have I got this right? Yeah. Something the Germans do poorly, I put in the questionnaire. Or the questionnaire, that was the question, and you put no such thing. I thought that's rather nice.
Yes, in general, I think the German society is very, very tolerant. Comparing with France, for example. And some years ago, when France sent the Roma back to Bulgaria and Romania, no one actually knew that the total number of the Roma sent back was approximately 300 people. So out of 300 people, they made such a great news, I mean, the journalists mainly, that this was like 30,000 or 300,000 people. But here in Germany, I see this what I love, particularly in Germany and Berlin, this which makes me really amazed, the different combinations of cultures and languages and how the Germans have these attitudes. Only the negative attitude could be to you as a foreigner in the institutions when you don't speak proper German. If you don't speak proper German, then you are stupid. But on the street, the people simply have very nice attitude.
Yeah, that's good to hear. We must move on because I do want to mention your book, because you referred to it a bit earlier. This is a wonderful children's book called My Name Was Hussein.
That's right.
And it's a children's book with let's see if we've got a nice illustrations inside and everything here. But it's slightly autobiographical because your name was Hussein.
That's right. So actually, I never thought that I will be a children's book writer or author, but I attended a kind of workshop where two American professors were doing a training about this, how to use children's books in the intercultural
I'm
education.
actually sorry, I have to rush you because we've got not a lot of time. But the name, you were called Hussein, and you changed it to Hristo, which is Christopher, as a Muslim, because of being in the army, though, I believe.
Yes, during the period when I changed my name, I was in the army, and I was asked politely to change the name. And yes, of course, this polite way of asking was actually an order, and then I had to. And
It's quite ironic that you changed your name to this. If you'd like to win a copy of this book, we're going to have to leave that there. Just write to us at insight@dw.de and you'll be put into the draw. And if you're the lucky winner, we'll be in touch. Just once again, a reminder to include your postal address in case you win. Then, of course, we can send it to you. We must move on. I mentioned the questionnaire, your favourite place. Now, we're going to my guests' favourite German place. It's very popular and a beautiful place just outside Berlin in Potsdam.
The Baroque palace Sanssouci was Prussian King Frederick the Great's favourite spot. He had it built to his tastes between 1745 and 1747 in Potsdam. He wanted a place where he could forget the cares of governing. The phrase sans souci in French means without a care. Today, the palace and its park draw millions of visitors from all over the world each year. Crystal chandeliers, marble, and ceiling frescoes. The rooms of the palace are elegantly and elaborately decorated. This is where Frederick the Great met with friends and advisors. The king's personal outlook is reflected in the park as well. It was designed to be beautiful, but also functional. The famous terraced vineyards below the palace are a synthesis of the useful and the beautiful. Figs, peaches, and grapes grow here. More than 70 kilometers of tree-lined avenues take visitors past impressive buildings, such as the Chinese tea house and the historic windmill. The park combines architecture, art, and landscape gardening. For the fall and winter, the exotic plants are moved into the 150-year-old orangerie.
One feels reverence for the hall and plants, some of which are 160 years old. We want to maintain everything so that it can be presented to future generations.
A bit past the orangerie is the Dragon House. It was designed to look like a Chinese pagoda and is decorated with figures of dragons. This was where the king's vintner lived, but it has been used as a restaurant since the 1930s. Many of the guests are regulars here.
They cater to the guests' desires here, so we recommend it to everyone. It's very tranquil here in the middle of the park. There's nothing better.
And every year, the city of Potsdam stages Night of the Palaces. It's a summer night with lots of open-air readings and concerts at Sanssouci Palace. Each year, more than 30,000 visitors attend. But it doesn't matter what season it is. Sanssouci Palace and its park always beckon, promising a journey back to an elegant era.
It has so many facets, Sanssouci. Do you have a favourite part?
Well, I love very much the park, where there are these small houses inside and places where you can sit. I have visited the Sanssouci several times, and every time I find it very fascinating and lovely. In general, I think Berlin and the surroundings, Brandenburg, is very interesting historical place, and this makes me very much interested to read about the history of Berlin and Brandenburg and Potsdam as well.
I want to show one last picture of you actually well away from Brandenburg, it has to be said, in Beloit College in America. But to ask you, you teach in both in many systems, but I'm particularly thinking of America, where to go to college you have to pay, let's say, basically. And here, where it's heavily subsidized, I mean, advantages, disadvantages of both systems?
Well, the American the American system is, yes, you have to pay there, but at the same time, it gives you a lot of possibilities for getting scholarships. And here, the students don't have the possibility to get scholarships. For example, the German students which I have, they work and they study. And in the United States, mainly they are focused on the study. And in the United States, there is a bigger, particularly in this college where I teach, it belongs to the so-called liberal arts colleges, where the students have the right to spend one semester abroad and to do some research and to travel, while here there is no such a possibility because of the Bologna process in the higher education in university systems. So
we're running out of time, so I'm going to have to stop you there because I want to ask you one more question about Germany, really, of living here. You've been here 3.5 years. Is this where you're going to stay? Do you feel you love, you say, the countryside around? Do you feel very happy here?
Yeah, I think this is something like my second home, and I'm planning to stay here till the end of my life. And I hope I will be able to work and to produce more in this environment because it's very encouraging and very, very nice.
Yeah, and it's a tolerant country.
Yes, it is. Indeed.
Yeah. It's been fascinating talking to you. I'm sorry I've had to cut you off at certain points. That's because you're so interesting and we could talk forever. Hristo Kyuchukov. I nearly said it wrong. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to win his book, get in touch with us, insight@dw.de. It's a fascinating book. He has a fascinating story. I'll be back with another fascinating guest at the same time next week. I hope you'll join us. Until then, from myself and all the crew here in Berlin, bye-bye.